Micron Bitcoin ETF provides investors with a regulated pathway into the cryptocurrency market.
When you're ready to take your investments to the next level, you might want to consider Monaco.
Hello and welcome to the Global View on this Monday. I'm Andrew Gagan. Good to have you with us here at ausbiz. So lots to consider, certainly from Friday, the IT outage, which crippled businesses and operations across the globe, also rippled across markets, unnerving investors and contributing to a sell-off in shares. On Wall Street, the S&P 500 and Nasdaq registered their biggest weekly decline since April, while the Dow was higher on the week. And the tech outage, as well as geopolitical concerns, saw the CBOE Market Volatility Index touch its highest level in 3 months. A glitch in a software update from cybersecurity firm Crowdstrike caused Microsoft's Windows operating system to crash, affecting computer networks across the globe. While the flaw was identified and fixes deployed, technical issues continued to affect some services. Crowdstrike shares tumbled, while shares in rival cybersecurity firms Palo Alto and SentinelOne gained. Microsoft shares were slightly weaker. Elsewhere, Eli Lilly advanced after China approved its weight loss drug. Intuitive Surgical shares surged after a second quarter results that beat expectations. Travelers shares tumbled on lower than expected growth in net written premiums. And Netflix fell after the streaming giant cautioned third quarter subscriber additions will be lower than a year earlier. Now ahead this week, the first of the Magnificent Seven mega-cap stocks report, with Tesla and Alphabet releasing earnings on Tuesday, followed by results from Microsoft, Apple and Amazon. Well, US political uncertainty has increased, with President Joe Biden announcing he will not be contesting November's election. In a statement, he said, "While it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term." Well, he has endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democrats' candidate to take on Donald Trump, but it's unclear if other senior Democrats will challenge Harris for the party's nomination ahead of the Democrats' convention next month. Well, the US FOMC has begun its blackout period before next week's policy meeting. US Treasury yields rose on Friday as investors waited on data this week to provide the next clues as to when the US Fed will begin cutting interest rates. Two-year yields rising to 4.5%, the 10-year at 4.23. And the US dollar climbed as investors sought the safe haven currency amid the global cyber outage. The Aussie trading at 67 US cents. Well, let's get across all those movements we're seeing, particularly on Wall Street at the moment, and as we're also in the midst of earnings season. Lachlan Hughes joining us from Swell Asset Management. Lachlan, very good to catch up with you again. Thanks for joining us. Let's first start on that drama that unfolded on Friday and took down so many computer networks across the globe. Crowdstrike appears to be the culprit here. How did this play out? And interestingly, given Crowdstrike shares, they fell 11%. Was that perhaps maybe more minimal than had been expected?
Hi, Andrew. Yes, no, look, it was down a lot more than that at some stage. So I think it is going to impact Crowdstrike. There'll be lots of enterprises out there at the moment currently using Crowdstrike who'll be evaluating the services of their competitors, whether that's Palo Alto or Microsoft. So, I mean, I think if you aren't in the industry, you probably haven't heard of a company called Crowdstrike, but it's amazing with 18% market share. But it is just so wedded to this whole cyber security kind of aspect to it that it drove it down significantly. And people just become quite concerned when this happens. And we saw industries impacted from airlines to banks and everything in between. But yeah, for a company of this size, it really can impact the whole world, given that they secure the endpoints of all these devices when they do have a software glitch like we saw on Friday.
Yeah, and of course, we saw that flow-on effect because it affected all those Microsoft operating systems. What was the response from investors in terms of Microsoft?
Yeah, it was a muted response to Microsoft. I think earlier in the day, I think it touched down a little bit more than that. But this could be a positive for Microsoft because they also provide endpoint security, and I think they are a good potential to take market share away from CrowdStrike as enterprises begin to evaluate their competitors.
Well, speaking of competitors, just as far as CrowdStrike is concerned, we did see a bit of a bump there as a result, didn't we?
We did, yeah, absolutely. Sentinel-1 was impressive, so it closed up quite strongly. And I think that's the market telling us that that's the one they see as the most, I guess, the beneficiary to all of the competitors out there at the moment. I think they will perform well as enterprises begin to evaluate their options.
So, Lachlan, that was a dramatic distraction, of course, we saw on Friday, given we are in the midst of US earnings season. So attention turning this week to the Mag 7. What are the expectations?
Well, I think Google's the big one that comes up on Wednesday this week. And look, what I think we'll see there is, particularly from the cloud business, we've seen a number of the pick and shovels play like NVIDIA, ASML, TSMC. They've all done very well, and they're the first ones to experience the kind of boom in this generative AI market. So I expect we'll see growth there for Google in the Google Cloud. But we still see enterprises migrating workloads to the cloud, and that's going to keep happening. So you've got that underlying driver there, and you also have optimizations, which a lot of clients has been optimizing their spend in the cloud in the last few quarters, but that's really coming to an end now. So you've got the double benefit of slow down the optimizations plus the cloud migrations, and then we really see generative AI as kind of incremental growth on top of those two aspects. So I think the cloud will perform quite well, but it's hard to say. I mean, quarter to quarter, Andrew, as you know, is anyone's guess. Longer term, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft stand to be huge beneficiaries from the shift to generative AI services. Nearly every company we speak to or we read about are evaluating in some way how generative AI can improve their service or product, and we see this as a huge opportunity, but always tough to call in the near term. And I guess the big driver for Google will be the advertising business, where we expect YouTube to be a very strong performer. Google search will probably grow mid to high single digit, but YouTube's really the one that's taking a lot of the share of the advertising dollars at the moment. It's the number one platform. It's bigger than Netflix, and given the fact that the content is produced by people on the street, they have a very low risk in terms of they don't need that content to succeed like Netflix does. So look, they're in a very strong position, and I imagine will report well this week.
Well, and you mentioned Netflix. They're also out, as I mentioned there on Friday, cautioning with third quarter subscriber additions. What are we seeing ahead then for Netflix?
Yeah, look, they've been cracking down on the password sharing. So that's really been a big driver of growth over the last several quarters for Netflix. And I guess the market was a touch disappointed that the outlook wasn't as strong as they were hoping for. But we expect subscriber growth to be a little more muted now, given the fact that the subscriber kind of password crackdown benefit has passed. But Netflix sits in an enormously favorable position. They are the largest player with over 277 million subscribers, which means their costs on a per subscriber basis are the lowest, which means they can outspend all of their peers in terms of content and programming. And they're doing that. They're doing a very good job. The advertising business, that's kind of the business that's expected to grow over the next several years. And to grow this, they're investing in new forms of programming, whether that's predominantly news and live, things like hot dog eating competitions, the roast of Tom Brady. You've got Mike Tyson's fight against Jake Paul coming up. All of these things are going to help their advertising business, but it's still very early days there. And we see that being a good growth area for Netflix moving forward. But they need to make the investments in advertiser tools so that advertisers can spend the money and they can take a bigger share of the growth going forward.
Now, also ahead, we've got Tesla. What are your thoughts on Tesla at the moment, Lachlan? I mean, earlier sort of had fallen out of the Mag 7, really, given its underperformance. Has made, well, sort of those shares having accelerated more recently, though, but questions remain about its business model, the older models that it is selling at the moment in the face of their competition, particularly from China.
Absolutely. EV demand is slowing. It's still growing, but it is slowing down. They have had a focus on bringing out a new model of car, but more recently they've decided to push that back while they focus on their robo-taxi. So we're all waiting for that 8th of August is the date of the robo-taxi day. And we get to find out what Elon Musk has in store there. But at the end of the day, it is a car business, yes, and given the fact that interest rates have been rising and that the demand for EVs is slowing, don't see quite as favourable environment for Tesla as they have had in the more recent past. And then I guess they do have other businesses like the battery business, which is obviously a growth business for them too. But with everyone focusing on the robo-taxi, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And I know that Bloomberg had reported in the last couple of weeks that might be pushed back. So if it does get pushed, that should be viewed as a negative. And like you said, Andrew, competition from China, that's also going to impact them. BYD is a very strong competitor. You have all the large German companies who are also moving into EVs as well. So they've really had basically the EV market to themselves for such a long time. But now we're seeing that start to come under pressure. And I even see, in the last week, Donald Trump making comments about what he'll do with EV subsidies. So look, it's going to be a tougher environment going forward as the early adopters, start to, as you move through that adoption curve from the early adopters to kind of the mainstream, and as growth in EVs begins to slow, it's going to be a more challenging environment for Tesla.
Lachlan, great to get across what is moving, particularly in the US tech space. Thanks for joining us from Swell Asset Management.
Thank you, Andrew.
Righto, let's just focus locally then before we get going at the open. We are expecting a negative start there. Look, we don't have the graphic there, but currently off around 0.8% on SPI futures. We'll stay with us because the open is just a couple of minutes away.